Welcome to Align to Your Design. I'm your host, Beth Davis. Isn't it time to wrap your business around your purpose and bring your greatest work to the world? Each week, join me as we explore various biometric tools such as human design and hand analysis and how to use them to fulfill your destiny and align to your design. We will reveal how to do the work you are designed to do rather than what you think you should do. Well, hey everyone, welcome to Align to Your Design. I have a very special guest here today. Her name is Mary Thorp. She is a 5-1 profile. If you know anything about human design, they are the universalizer of their discoveries, helping people grow. They are ultimate problem solvers, ultimate investigators, and Mary happens to be the left angle cross of Defiance. Part of my eyeballs, I want to share with you her bio. She's a heretic with the best of them. Mary's here to disrupt the status quo. And her work has her collaborating with visionaries and leaders in designing conversations that shape the future of humanity. Mary promises a world of harmony where all people are fulfilled. That's such a beautiful vision. Fulfilling the promise they are for the world. She hopes that people can live lives that are designed from their heart. The question she poses is, what is your promise? I will put down in the description links to her ipromisebank.com and her email. So if you want to reach out to Mary, you can. And with that, I am going to bring Ms. Mary Thorp on to Align Your Design. Mary Thorp, welcome. Hi.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
I've been wanting to do this for so long. So my very first question is, what do you mean by people bringing their promise to the world? And maybe the backup question to that is, what do you mean by promise? And then how can people fulfill that?
Well, I did a course that was about creating your promise for the world. And I went like, what would I promise for the world? But in the very first weekend, I discovered that not only did I have a promise, I didn't know what it was yet, but I saw every person that's on the planet has a promise for the world. Like, we come here to learn lessons, yes, but we come here to leave planet, and that the planet is altered out of our being here. So I began dreaming and looking and, discovering that I was committed, that literally I came into that program committed to people's promises staying in existence. Other people had done the course and they had created their promise for the world. And half of them that I talked to didn't remember it. I'm going like, what? I'm doing this course, this year-long course, and I'm going to forget my promise after I create it, which is actually how the promise bank showed up. And so I knew that every person had a promise that was probably hidden from their view. But with a few questions, maybe I'll ask you some questions and see what we discover with you today, Beth.
I'd love that.
So, like what took me a year to do in this program, I can do in about 90 minutes with people now. And it literally alters their lives. So one of the questions I ask is, what do people come to you for? Like, why do they come to you instead of going to your sister or instead of going to your colleague? So what would you answer to that? Why do people come to you, Beth?
Well, I think the reason people come to me is I've turned being myself into an art form. And fundamentally, the more I am me, the more it gives permission to other people to, in a sense, let their freak flag fly. I mean, that's the simplest way I can boil down the mundane essence of it is there's an empowerment and validation and permission in that.
Exactly. And you don't hold any,
No.
If people do something with it, great. If they don't, okay, that's their choice.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to ask you, like, I like this line of questioning, but I'm wondering, what is your promise?
My promise is that we live in a world of harmony where all people are fulfilled. They're fulfilling their promise for the world. And mine happens to, I say living lives designed from their heart. That's my promise. And I declared that by last year, it's already 2024, by 2022, that would happen. And I was like at the end of 22, and I went like, oh, crap. I wouldn't necessarily say that my promise got fulfilled. Now, what do I do? But when I started looking, Beth, I saw that we live in a world of the most harmony ever been on the planet. Now, given what most people hear about, people would say, "Are you crazy?" And I probably would say yes, if you just look at what you see. But I was involved with a promise for the world that Werner Erhard created, Werner Erhard and Buckminster Fuller in 1977. For the very first time, somebody stood for, after speaking, that hunger and starvation would end on the planet. We've been feeding people and taking care of people, but before then, nobody said hunger will end on the planet. And everybody said, "You're crazy." The World Bank said it's impossible. No, no way that can happen. If there are humans on the planet, there will be hunger and starvation. But as we began sharing this conversation, they said hunger and starvation will end on the planet. It's an idea whose time has come. Now, today, by 1989, the World Bank said, "Well, you're right. Hunger can end, but you're wrong on the date. It won't end by the end of the century. It'll end by 2025. We're now only a year away from 2025, and they, along the course, have changed the year to 2030. Extreme starvation will end on the planet. So at that time, in 1977, 78, when I got involved, there were 27,000 women and children, basically, who were dying every day. Now, I don't know what it is today, but last time I heard it was like down to at least 17,000. And I think it's probably less with what's going on in the planet right now with all the chaos as we're shifting paradigms. I'll speak to that a little bit too. I don't know exactly what it is, but what got said was that people would end their own hunger. What was missing is the will of people to end hunger. So, the political will got addressed. There are people who started going to Congress all the time and dealing with a bipartisan, conversation that has everybody involved about ending hunger and all the different pieces. The subjugation of women got distinguished as one of the causes of hunger on the planet. And you can see all the phases that have been going through. In my lifetime, I was born in 1947, so in a month or two, I'll be 77 years old. I have seen dramatic shifts on the planet towards women's, I feel like I'm talking about a whole bunch of things, but
Oh no, I'm trying. You're great. You're right on point. I'm tracking
okay,
it.
good.
Yeah.
So part of this whole shift that Buckminster Fuller began, I think he was one of the first people who said, we're at a time in humanity where we no longer have to kill each other for food. Like there's enough food, there are enough solutions, there's enough money for everybody to be okay. So instead of you and I coming together with some food in front of us, it's like either you're going to get it or I'm going to get it, and I'm going to try and kill you so I get it, or you're going to kill me to get it. We don't have to live like that anymore. And so we're moving to a world of you and me. It's like, Beth, we need food. How can we have this happen together? Where do we need to find it? What do we need to do? And, you and I, we would say, and how can we have fun doing it? So that's where things have moved for many of us, are moving for the planet. So for me, we're in this juxtaposition, in this paradigm shift from you or me to you and me. And then the other caveat that I would say is that the you or me comes from the masculine energy on the planet that has had us all survive. But everybody's been influenced by it. You and I operate from the masculine. Men operate from the masculine. It's not the patriarchy's bad. Look what they did to everybody. No, it's the paradigm that we've been living in of you or me that has caused us to be where we are. And as the feminine energy, which all of us have, we're all made of masculine and feminine, yin, yang. It's like, it's the balance that we are. We're coming into this rise of feminine energy for both men and women. Women who have more access to it are here to empower and support men in having that feminine energy in them be all right and come to a balance and work together and collaborate. So, like this hunger project and this promise for the world that these people began with has now has taken hold. People are ending their own hunger. People are responsible, as in the human design, where Ross says that in 2027 we are going to be this individual, like the individuation, the differentiation of human beings, where instead of fitting into the boxes that we all have tried to be normal, that we are being unleashed into our own gifts that we came with. So promises for the world, people in their gifts can see, oh, this is what I'm here for. Oh, I call human design like the laser to get to your promise, to get to your purpose in life. And, you and I have lots of things in common. We're both heretics and investigators. We're both 5/1s. We're both here to lead. We're both here to, speak out and speak up and guide people to be in their direction, to be living their lives in the direction that they came for.
You have a question for
So does
you.
that cover about the
Oh, it's
promise?
great.
I don't
It's great.
a
I,
little
I
bit.
have a question for you that's a bit of a
Sure.
heretic question. Um,
Okay, good. Oh, good.
I wonder what all these people did before all the interference. Like it seems to me that, say, the people in Africa or Hungary, there was a time when they could take care of themselves. It seems like the lot on the planet is this learned helplessness, maybe from various other tribes invading. And when I say tribes, I mean all the people of the world are made up of tribes. But did the Hunger Project do any research into that? Like what created all this famine? Was it something that's been going on for millennia? Or was it hastened with industrialization or reduced by it? I don't know enough about it.
If we look at the masculine energy being the prevalent energy on the planet, we don't know. We only have a history that goes back so far, but
Hmm.
what I would say is that masculine energy of you or me has just been killing each other in whatever way we've been doing it. And there's we've done a pretty awesome job. We just all know there's something else. And the people who are here, and like, I know I was born for this time. I know you were born for this time. I even know my children who are in their 40s now. They were born in the 80s, so that they were in their 20s by the time the century turned to 2000. They're here to be part of this shift into love and collaboration and this feminine energy.
Hmm.
Like, I
You
have a
know,
really macho son who's a 3/5 generator. And he says to me, I mean, he rides motorcycles and he's a 3/5. What else do you say? He's a heretic on the unconscious side, but a martyr on the conscious side. He tries everything. And he says to me, thank you so much for letting it be okay that I could cry and show my emotions
oh,
growing up.
yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's such an interesting time. It's interesting talking with you because whenever I do, parts of my own history or herstory get pieced together. And when I was 11 or 12, I read the Diary of Anne Frank, which people are now saying that her father wrote. And, I know there's, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh, can we just give her credit? She probably wrote it. But I remember reading it and being completely baffled by what I was reading. Like, what is with humanity? And then I asked my mother about it, and then I started researching the Holocaust really in depth. I've spent hundreds of hours researching the Holocaust and just human tragedy in general. And now we're in a time where that whole cycle is coming around again of that battle. And then if we want to go even deeper to it, there's the cycle that is similar that we had with the American Revolution. So there's these overlapping circles, the World War II cycle and then the American Revolution cycle. And yet, as I often say, nothing repeat in terms exactly. It's always
Right.
different. So like 80s music is 80s music. That's over. It's done. Not coming back. It's 80s music. And at the same time, patterns can repeat. So
Exactly.
what patterns particularly are standing out to you? Let's start with the positive ones. What are two or three positive patterns?
Beth, is I am not an astrologer,
Right.
but with the work in human design, I mean, I've always paid attention to what people's astrological sign are. It just is again, it's a laser into giving a clue about how people are before you have to go through a whole whole bunch of stuff. So where the planets are right now is similar to 1987 in the harmonic convergence when this information came into raw. And I think that they're 250 years is when Pluto's just moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, and it's next 20-year cycle. But all of those things we can see, like you said, it's a spiral. So they're similar things. What we haven't learned in the past are showing back up. And the Holocaust, what I would say about that, and then I'm going to go back to in 2016, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And I live in West Virginia now after being in Philadelphia for 30 years and originally growing up in Iowa. So I've had a few different places and now live in the mountains of West Virginia. And the harmonic convergence, I was in Philadelphia when that happened. And then the information with Raw, 2016. So I happened to be in Philadelphia. One of my pieces of work has been locating and documenting all the sculptures of an artist from the mid 20th century named Harry Bertoia. And one of his sculptures that had gone into storage in 1999 in Philadelphia in 2016 was coming out of hiding, of being closeted, to be installed on the grounds of the Woodmere Museum. And it took forever to get all the funding and all the permissions and everything to have that happen. And it happened. The woman who was in charge of art found my papers from 1999 in her folder in 2016 and called me and said, I thought you might be interested in knowing about this sculpture, and given your original papers that you're documenting everything. So that sculpture came out of storage on July 19th, which happens to be the day that my ex-husband was his birthday and my granddaughter's birthday in 2016. And right after that installation, the Democratic convention was going on. And that year, somehow I got called I went to the Democratic convention in West Virginia, in Charleston. I'd never done anything like that. I used to work the polls. But anyway, it called me into this whole thing. Now I'm talking about Bernie Sanders. Well, in West Virginia, Bernie Sanders won all 55 counties.
Wow.
All 55 counties. And in the past, West Virginia was, like JFK won through West Virginia. I mean, and then we've had Democratic senators and governors and stuff. Anyway, the Democratic super delegates didn't honor the vote of the people in West Virginia for Bernie. They voted instead for Hillary. And West Virginia voted for Trump. It went red overnight.
Because did they feel betrayed by that move?
Totally.
So they're like, just screw you then. We're just going to really stick it to you.
No, it wasn't that. They were they really wanted something different. So Bernie was that answer for them. But then the machinery, the machinery of the political parties, it's irrelevant, the party. This just happens to be the one I've been following. But while I was in Philadelphia at this whole thing, I was talking to people and listening to people. And I'm like, I think there's a chance with everything that's going down that this might, that Trump might get elected. And as I kept thinking about it, I was like, oh, this is the last hold of the patriarch, and it's going to get icky before it gets better. But what I knew in my heart and all the work that I've done is that there was enough light on the planet, from light workers, from people's thinking, from all the transformation I've done for decades. The Hunger Project is just one of those pieces, and the extraordinary people and conversations that are going on. There has to be enough light on the planet to be able to have this showing up. This is like shining the lights in all the crevices and all the hidden places. And so I've never, I was shocked when the election happened, but quickly I got up off the floor and went like, okay, I just have to hold the space of the light for this shift to be happening. That's what it looks like to be in this juxtaposition between these two paradigms.
Yeah, and I'm struck by what you said about all 55 counties and how I somehow missed that story. Was that story kind of buried?
Well, I'm sure it wasn't the only one that was
Right.
going on in the country. But, I mean, for me, the machine was bigger than whatever Bernie was doing. Bernie has been this conversation. And I don't mean to
Oh no,
have
let's
the
go there.
conversation
Politics
going
and
in any
religion,
way.
bring it on. We're heretics. Those are my favorite things to talk about. All that
But,
don't talk about politics and religion is just to control people. That's all it
right,
is.
exactly.
Right? Be
But
polite. Don't say anything. Yeah, screw that.
but but Bernie Sanders' conversation has been the same since he came to
Yeah,
Congress.
never changed. I know. He's
Never
so
changed.
solid.
So he offered something that nobody else was. And I think there were a lot of people in the country. I mean, I went to the convention and I'm like, I'm not giving up. I don't care what they're doing. I'm still holding the space for Bernie Sanders to be the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. I mean, it was so rotten. It was so rotten. It's the epitome of the control and oh, that's okay, sweetie, we know better than you. It's the whole system in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, it seemed like to me, Trump and Clinton, my problem with both of them is they're just playing the same game.
That's my
I didn't
point.
see, I like, they're none of them are draining the swamp or creating a change. And then Bernie was middle of the road, much more akin to, say, a country like Denmark, which is one of the happiest on the planet, right? For many reasons. And then I do have a question for you because I don't ever get a good answer to this. What do you think is, because you've lived longer than me, so I think maybe you've seen it, you could explain it, and you've been more involved in politics. What is the genesis of this insanity around, oh my God, socialism, as if we're going to go like totalitarian, when point of fact, the United States has a lot of social services, police and the firefighters and what have you. And it seemed to me Bernie is very middle of the road and really wants to empower everyone, business, right? The individual, people who are in low income. He seemed like very middle of the road to compare to some of the more right wing, say, politicians in Europe. Where do you think this genesis came where the Trump Clinton machine and all that drama pushed him out? Like, do you have any, like, what are your thoughts about it
Well,
as a defiant heretic?
what I would say is this shift of paradigms. The you or me paradigm is, it's like holding on for dear life. I'm going to come back to the Holocaust for a minute. I mean, I think the insanity of what's going on, I don't even participate in the
Mm.
conversation because it's so senseless. And, like the Jews said, this happened to us. We'll never let it happen again. It's like, are you kidding me? Look at this. I mean, this isn't the only place on the planet, but that is the biggest piece of shit bullshit and then watching what's going on, it's like this is the same thing that we grew up with, talking out of both sides of your mouth. It's like, come on, people. So then what I would say is this is the world that I stand for, is a world of you and me. And it's
Mm.
never happened before. So we have no idea what it looks like. It literally is a piece of work in creation. And it's, like the Dalai Lama said, Western women, he said this in something in 2009. And most people haven't even heard it. And I repeat it all the time. He says Western women will save the world. Now,
100%, because we're like the most privileged. Like we have the
and
most access now.
and the most voice.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
I was just working with some clients today and I said, look, we don't have time for anything right now. In every conversation that we're in, if you don't know how to speak up and say something that you've never said before, go find somebody to coach you to do it. Go
Mm-hmm.
talk to somebody. Go learn your human design and speak from your own voice instead of something that you've been shaped into by somebody who doesn't even know who you are, including your parents and education and all of that. So, that I'm a designer. I've worked in fashion, I've worked in architecture and design. I've worked in studying this artist from the mid 20th century. I got to study for 20 years the period of time I grew up in. It's been the most fascinating and educational. I took on in 1997 living my life in joy, which I had no clue what that meant. But I just went, that's it. I'm not doing anything that's not joyful for me anymore. And I began, well, like, well, what does living in joy even mean? And then I would have this feeling that would come up and go like, oh, this isn't very joyful. And I'd literally give myself 15 minutes. I'd either change the situation or I'd leave.
Mm-hmm.
And just radically like that. And sometimes I would go grocery shopping. Sometimes I'd go for a walk. Sometimes I'd go talk to somebody. I mean, I had no idea what it meant, but the Bertoia project showed up inside of that. And I used living in joy to guide that whole project. And I became a world expert on his work. I spoke at Sotheby's in New York. I spoke to several AIA organizations around the country. I traveled around the country, calling people, knocking on people's doors to photograph their extraordinary art collections that had Bertoia sculptures in them. And I mean, this was in the early 2000s. Now people live the van life. But at the time, I was driving around the country in my van, and sometimes I slept in it. Sometimes I didn't know where I was sleeping. I didn't have very much money. So I'd find people's houses to stay at, people that I met along. Anyway, it was fascinating. It developed. This comes back to my human design, which I've now learned that my design is to live a very individual life and open the doors in all these places and then share it with the collective to let them know you can do this too. What would you do? And what's your promise for the world? Why are you even doing what you're doing? Anyway, it's a fascinating place to be standing, to empower, being an elder and being able to empower women, people. I talk to men too, but people who are really up to something big need support just like people who can't pay their bills.
What was it that so attracted you to Bertoia?
When I was 25 years old, I lived in Philadelphia. I got there because I moved with a husband who I divorced very quickly afterwards. But there I was in Philadelphia, and I got a job selling commercial furniture to and through architects and interior designers. I met the man who owned this business through his wife at this health spa that I was working at. Anyway, my boss was really busy, and I was I was in my early 20s, and stuff he didn't want to go to, I'd say, can I go? So I was part of this art museum. I was part of this committee that supported 20th century art in the museum. It was called Collab. And so I went to all these meetings. And one day we had a meeting at somebody's house, and there was this sculpture. I'm 5'10". And so it was like a little bit of, I had really long legs. It was a little bit above my waist. And you touched these rods together, and they made the most extraordinary sound that went through your body, the vibration. It was like, oh,
I can feel it as you're talking about it.
isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, I went like, wow, would I ever love to own one of these? But I could never afford it. So at that time, that sculpture was like maybe $3,000. It was probably 1973, 74, maybe 75. Well, to give you a little idea about the cost of things then, I bought a 3-story townhouse for $7,500. It was a fixer-upper, but it was still 3-story and a
Yeah.
basement
Wow.
near not in the art museum area for $7,500. I'd saved $1,000. My parents gave me $1,000. I don't know. I must have had a little bit more. My boss co-signed a loan for $5,000. That's how I bought this house. So $3,000 for this sculpture was like half a house. That puts it in perspective a little ways. So 25 years later, so I was 50. My mom died. I got $50,000 from my parents after she died. I have 4 sisters. And I had no idea what to do with it. I was thinking about investing it in stocks. And my partner, who has a really deep background in art, he grew up in France, and his name's Pascal. said to me, I never wanted to, I've always invested in art. You can enjoy it all along the way, and it rarely goes down in price. Usually it goes up, so it's always been a great investment for me. And he said, besides that, displaying your stock around your house, very pleasant to look at. So I always thought about, isn't that a great image? I always thought about a bathroom covered in stock paper. So it was like, well, that was easy. So we started buying art. And then one morning I was talking to him on the phone, and I got this message. You know how it comes like this and you can't miss it. This message said, buy a Bertoia sculpture. And I went, Pascal, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy myself a Bertoia sculpture. And he said, oh, what a great idea. Within 2 weeks, I owned two Bertoia sculptures. I still have these. One of them is a little tiny one like this, and one of them is a model, like a model for these sounding sculptures that he ended up doing. Oh, I get so excited. So anyway, I just started falling in love. I started doing some research on him. I started talking to people about it. And I went to one of the family members and said, is anybody doing a catalog raisonné on your, oh, I forgot one piece. One day, Pascal and I were on the sun deck, and I said, oh, Pascal, I don't know what it is about these sculptures, but I love them so much. I could spend the rest of my life looking for them. And he said, well, people do that. I went like, what do you mean? He said, they write a catalog raisonné. And I said, what's that? And he said, all the works of an artist. And I went, I had seen I'd seen what's really called a monograph. It's a book about that thick, and it's got a section of their art. I went, oh, I can do that. So 3 days later, we were going to his studio to meet one of the people in the family. While we were there, I said, is anybody doing a catalog raisonné on your father's work? And he said, no. And then he said, do you mean to say I could turn everything about Harry Bertoia over to you? And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but that'd be fine with me. So he didn't have to be responsible for it. So anyway, that was the begin. So he said, yeah, he said, that'd be fine. Within 2 days, I got a letter that had like a contract to say I could do the catalog raisonné on Harry Bertoia. Well, then within 3 months, they had a family meeting and they decided that, like all this. And I was already supporting him in doing two exhibitions with Knoll Furniture. And so, he said, I'm sorry. And I went like, it's not a problem. I just was at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe, and I saw there are lots of books written about her. And I'm sure that every person that wrote a book didn't have permission to do it. This is in my heart. I know I'm meant to do it, and I'm just going to continue. So the great part is I didn't have to give them any information that the contract was kind of,
it was null and void at that point, right?
Null and void, basically.
Yeah.
And so Pascal and I paid for this entire 20-year project. We bought all the cameras. I think two people contributed $300, and somebody gave me $1,000, of which I gave them books, which we put together later. And anyway, it was extraordinary. It was a lifetime, like an education that you couldn't get anywhere. And I learned so much on so many dimensions. And while I was traveling, again, back to human design, I have learned that my environment, people have mountains and people have valleys and people have shores. And well, my environment that I thrive in is called markets. And it happens to be external markets. So I go out and I meet people and I find information and I put things together. And I've even heard you say people with markets are supposed to make money. I don't know. I've never had lots of money, but having money never stopped what I did. And I'll give you one example. I bought a Bertoia sculpture for, I don't know, $6,000. And some years later sold it at auction for $70,000. So, which paid enough for me and Pascal to live for a year, and I used it in exhibitions, and it got a really big scar on it. I've got a million stories. That was another story, but it got the scar on it. And if had it happened to anybody else's sculpture, I would have been in big trouble. But it was my sculpture. And it's like this exhibition piece like the scar I have in my hand when I cut an avocado. And, it's like part of this Bertoia sculpture's life.
So let me ask you, I'm very intrigued. What are the feelings that Bertoia
Oh, you asked that
stirs
question.
in you? Because, you've told us about your fascination with this artist, but what is it specifically for you that brings you alive when you think of his
So
art
I
or see his
was
art?
I was at a collector's house in Denver, and I was interviewing her. She had a sculpture that had belonged to her parents, that her parents bought from Harry, and it was now hers. And she and I were having this amazing conversation. And she told me this story about how her husband, anyway, it's too long to tell, but she and her husband ended up buying a house to get married in, that his aunt and uncle lived in and got married in. I mean, it was like, woo. Anyway, she said to me, "So, Mary, what do you think the connection is between you and Bertoia?" And I said, "Lynn, I usually ask those kinds of questions. Nobody asked me that before." I said, "I'm not sure, but I'll find out." So, subsequently, in some work that I was doing with someone, I asked, and I found out that Harry and I have been in other lifetimes together, and often between life, and that we actually planned this lifetime for him to come in and do the work and for me to follow up and do this. I don't think that whole thing is complete yet, but I don't know exactly what, like, I don't know the end of the story or the next phase of the story. It's kind of like to be discovered. When I lived in Philadelphia, Harry lived outside of Philadelphia, and I was at all kinds of things that he could have been at, or, what, I was here and he was there. So I never met him physically, but I knew him intimately from his sculptures and from all the research that I did. And when as Lynn and I kept talking, she said to me, "Mary, this would make the most extraordinary romantic film."
Yeah.
I went like, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, how many people do you know have fallen in love with somebody who's not even on the planet and is traipsing around the country talking to hundreds and thousands of people?" And we do have some kind of a love affair that, as I said, where he died in 1978, the year that I did the S training, which was transformational work that Werner Erhard did. And I happened to go to the exhibition in Washington, D.C. at the National Gallery, where there was a exhibition. I have the book from it. And the Harry's best man at his wedding, his wife was one of the experts on Edward Munch.
Wow.
And while Clifford West was his name, while Clifford was there at that exhibition, he went to say goodbye to Harry. Harry died November 6, 1978. There are all kinds of intricacies like that happened over this time I was doing this research. So, as I said, I don't think it's complete, but I don't know what the end of the story is or the next phase of the story is. But
Well,
he and I definitely have a connection.
yeah, it's going out on the wire, that's for sure. Wow, that's so fascinating. So I'm looking at my notes from when we spoke before I hit record, and we'll take a moment now, look at your human design to wrap up our
Perfect.
conversation. Now you had asked me about finding that expanding your audience with your messaging. So let's just go sort of broad and
And
narrow.
then may I say, Beth, that this is the first recorded podcast speaking engagement that I have had. And I want to say thank you to you for inviting me and for launching this next phase of my work, and the part you've played in having me get clear about what I'm here for, why I'm here to lead and to bring my heretic views to the world, to say, no, we are moving into a you and me world. And every person on the planet, through their differentiation, through their unique signature of their design, is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is going to be a world that works for everyone, with no one left out. If you ever have any question about it, I'll say that to the audience. If you ever have any question, call me.
Yeah, yeah, we'll make sure your contact info is in the description. You and I are very much aligned on this because when I started just going on the search for purpose in my late 20s and found it pretty quickly. And I went, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm here to help people find their purpose. I'd always come from that place, especially if I go back to age 11 reading The Diary of Anne
Mhm.
Frank. Oh, wow. Everyone has a unique perspective. Everyone has a unique way of being in the world. And thank God Anne wrote it down because she lives on. She lives on through her writings. And we all have this way that we live on, like Bertoia, in a way, living on in large part because of you. So I think we're very much aligned that way. And it's true that the beautiful future we can create is the recognition, and it's probably the first time in human history that this has even been possible,
Exactly.
is that every single one of us is meant to be the leader of our own life. And it's hard to imagine a world like that when there's a lot of people still conditioned and not able to make their own choices consciously.
That, and we've always looked to leaders to tell us what to do.
That's right.
That and people think that they want to be the hero in having this work. It's not going to be like that.
Mm-mm.
It's not going to be like that. Every one of us is the hero.
That's right.
Or that's why I do the work that I do, is designing conversations that shape the future of humanity, because what we're saying has shaped it the way it is. So it's critical to speak newly a world that works for everyone, where people are collaborating, where everyone, part of my history is that I was molested as a child and then married a man who molested children. It's like that is ending in this lifetime. But how do in the past, it's like, those people, they're terrible. No, my father, I loved him. The father of my children, I loved him. And he did these things. It's like, how do we create a world where, not that that's condoned, I do not condone it, but, and like, how do you love this? There's a man who was president of American University who was molested by his mother when he was growing up. And he wrote a whole book on it. I don't know the name of it right off the top of my head. I've read it a couple of times, but after his father died and he saw his mother at the funeral and had to go back into the bedroom where he got triggered and went back to Washington, D.C. and started making odd phone calls that got traced and back to the president of American University. And he was going to get picked up and go to prison or whatever. But there was a program at Johns Hopkins University that he went to instead. And within 60 days, he did the work there and got reinstated. I don't know exactly the time frame, but his daughter, he was married and they had one daughter, said something that's still in my heart. She said, if my father had a heart attack or if he had cancer, we would not abandon him. Why would we abandon him?
Mm-hmm.
It opened a possibility for me
Yeah.
that I don't know that I could have thought of on my own. So that's the world. It's like, with all the work that people are doing in trauma, how people have individual traumas, but that we have, like, the Holocaust is a trauma for the specific people, but for the world. And what's going on right now, it's horrendous that we can even imagine that human beings are like this with each other. It's insanity. So
Yeah.
what does
It
a
really
world
is
that works for
insanity.
everyone look like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to bring up your chart.
Okay, great, Beth.
I'm going to bring up Mary's human design chart. So let's talk about leadership, because you have so much of it. Of course, it comes across in the way that you speak. I'll annotate this for people new to human design.
Great.
There are basically, find a different color here. There are 5 leadership channels in the chart. There's the 1020, which connects the G center here to the throat. And then there's the 731, which is the Alpha Democrat channel. Then
Which
we
you
have
have.
I have the whole channel. Then we get the channel of contribution, and then the channel of the prodigal. And then this channel over here is the money channel. Now, what's so interesting about this in your chart is you have the 1020 channel, which is and it's the only leadership channel. You have the whole channel. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 gates that are part of leadership channels. The full channel is the 1020. And The 1020 is the voice of the individual. It's a differentiated voice, and it's leadership that isn't about necessarily leading the group. It isn't about winning fans. It's very much that contrarian kind of leadership. Now, the shadow of it can become very self-centered, narcissistic, in part because that 1020, and I'm talking about this channel here, connects the behavior of the self with the contemplation gate 20 in the now, contemplating things in the now and speaking in the now. And what can happen is if people try to hop on the coattails of the 1020 owner, they become even more solid in their identity. And with someone less aware than you, it can become a narcissistic defense to keep people from interfering. On the positive, though, it's in a sense knowing how to act in just about any situation. You know what to wear, what not to wear, what to say, what not to say. It's almost the ultimate politician on behalf of empowering individuals. So you can align your energy to the person you're speaking with so that they feel seen, heard, and understood, which is pretty much the opposite of a narcissistic defense that just says me, 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 me. And you may find you kind of flip between those as you evolve and grow through things like, exasperation with people trying to interfere or not understanding what you're saying, all the way over to almost endless capacity to have compassion. So you can flip between them. And the interesting thing with any channel in a human design chart is either side of the channel is a binary, this and that, yin and yang. It's just the nature of things. So 20 here is an individual voice that is to ensure the individual's survival. And 10 is an energy of I can adapt my behavior to what the circumstances require. I remember my father telling me as a kid, and I think it was good advice. He said, if you're going to go into an organization, go in as one of them. Don't stand out. Go in, be humble, and listen and find out what's going on, and then wait to be asked, wait to be shown. And then your individuality will have an opportunity to shine. But if you go in there like some hotshot consultant, telling everybody this and that, and you know better, and you haven't even spent 2 days in the organization, your behavior will get shot down.
Really
so you have
good
this
advice.
ability to be, isn't he right? Yeah. So
yes,
you have an ability to be a conforming nonconformist.
well said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So that's that.
doesn't 10 have to do with principles as well?
Yeah. Well, it's the principles of correct behavior.
Right. Okay, good.
So here's an example. I don't have gate 10, and here's an example of where I once really remember screwing this up. I was in my 20s, and a friend had invited me to go see some guru of hers. And now the idea of a guru, ultimately, a true guru, empowers you. But the way most gurus operate, they got an entourage and everybody worships them and wants to touch the hem of their garments. It just makes me want to barf in a bucket. I'm like, oh God, it's just another
Right.
narcissistic, I am God, worship me bullshit scenario, right?
Right.
And so it was one of those, and we were at this fancy restaurant. It was some Indian guru, and everybody was all in awe. And this person said some very mundane and uninteresting things. And I turned to my friend, I'm like, what is the big deal with this? This is weird. And she was so offended. You're being so disrespectful. We never spoke again. Like, I remember we never got together again. And after the fact, years later, I realized, oh, I just needed to be respectful to her. This was her guru. She wasn't asking me about my opinion about the business of gurus. She just was so proud and happy to meet this person. And it was a big day for her. And I basically shat all over it. So,
got it.
Right. So gate 10 is like the awareness to go, oh, this is so much bullshit. Like what you were able to do. Like, oh God, but I love my friend. And my friend is really not in that place yet to recognize. I mean, she did later, but she's not in that place to realize a bunch of bullshit to make money for some, nonprofit that's fleecing people. And it wasn't the place for me to prove my point. I wasn't asked. I was invited there as a guest. And so my duty was to be a good guest. And so gate 10 radically understands this.
Great
There's a
example,
time,
Beth.
right? There's a time and a place for heresy. And primarily it's when you've been asked or invited to share it, like we're doing here. Right? We're agreeing to be here. I'm open to what you have to say. You're open to what I have to say. It's unlikely we're going to offend each other. We can do that because we understand each other. So you innately know how to do this. which is very powerful. Now, if we move to gate 31, that's the voice of influence. And you have gate 31 multiple times, right? So you've got gate 31 in your design Saturn and in your personality Saturn. Now, this is very interesting because Saturn energy, the frequency of Saturn, it's a huge planet, right, with all those rings. And so it's got a huge influence on us. And when Saturn is in gate 31, there's going to be a sternness to your influence. It's not that you don't have a sense of humor, because you do. You're very funny, but there's a way in which you comport yourself that very much communicates, do not mess with me. Like, I'm funny and I'm easygoing, but don't even try it. And that's the power of 31. And it is the voice of influence to the selves in a group. So it's a voice of influence teaching people that the way to manifest is to be yourself, right? The heart of manifestation. I mean, it's all through human design. The key to prosperity is be yourself. The key to abundance is express what you're exultant to, like your love for Bertoia. It's that kind of energy that attracts others, is your own interest in life and your view of life. And so you very much have this stern voice of influence. And in line 3, it's saying, look, if you want to manifest, you have to adhere to the principles, say, of gate 10. You've got to adhere to the moment. And line 2 is very mesmerizing, but it's also very private. You know, it's not inviting people to get too familiar with you. You invite them. They don't, and they might invite you, like the gentleman who said, oh, do you want to do this catalog for the family? And you can hear the family. And of course, they all missed out. It probably never happened, right? Did they ever get it done? Probably not. Did they?
Some academic woman is working with the daughter now. They're working on it.
Yeah, good. They'll probably come back to you. That's what I feel is going to happen.
But I caught a period of time where I have pictures of sculptures and saw sculptures that nobody else will see. But it's all perfect because I was to collect the information. And like I said, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it, but I have it all. Pascal digitized it also.
Well, me with my intuition, when you told me the story, I was like, oh, family meeting, and then, but I feel like something's going to come around. You said it's not done. Anyway.
Yes.
So you have this power, this influence, and people feel it. And the right people will invite you, and vice versa. There's kind of mutual invitation. So I just want to clarify that because I didn't really say that right initially.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then gate one off the G center is the artist. And it is in your personality. And line 5 is famous artist. You.
That's my earth sign, which is my life lesson.
Yeah, well, the life lesson is exactly the point, that your fame will come not so much through other people's art, but your own. Because the lesson, when people say, oh, that's my lesson, I'm like, exactly, you're supposed to fix it. That's why you have it, right? It's a little bit of friction. So line 5 is fame. I mean, that is the gate and the line of reaching society with your talent, your creative talent. And so when you talk about money, I mean, that's where the money is for you too. Yeah. And the challenge will be negotiating for it, because this is in your personality. So we see it in you, but you may not see it. You're like, I know I'm creative. But Bertoia, or, so-and-so, or Pascal, or whoever. And it's not that you diminish yourself. It's just that you may not perceive yourself the way others do.
I have a sense, Beth, in this designing, designing conversations for humanity, for the future of humanity, that it may not be any kind of art that we know.
Yeah. It's going to be
that's
new.
The first time it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's new because I'm getting chills. Yes.
I've done things. I mean, I'm in the quarter of civilization, which I've learned from you, is the building civilization, bringing it from idea to form, and that we're people who work with our hands. And then I have touch. So all of those pieces, like I love fabric. I've worked with my freedom pants. I still have now I could, coming together with the right person, I am totally open. I think freedom pants could be my art in the world for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And we need freedom pants now, because really
for
what's
men
at
and
stake
women
is freedom. Yeah.
Yeah. And all the genders and everything in between. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, the thing is, I won't point out every single thing in here because of, our limited time, but when you're talking about the Hunger Project, I mean, your desk work here, your design Mars, Richard Rudd calls it your vocation, is to have sensitivity to the needs of the community, and then it connects over to what keeps you healthy, and it's being the individual who's making sure people get fed. I mean, you can't even make this up. Hunger
Right.
Project, right? We don't want people to go hungry. And and I know Lynn Twist, right? She worked on the and of course her probably far better than I worked on the Hunger Project. It's like it's a calling. And you have the
Right.
whole channel of the 1949, which is a revolutionary channel that is sensitive to the needs of the tribe, and it is very clear about who is making those needs fulfilled and who is obstructing or getting in the way of the people getting fed. And that in part is what makes you a revolutionary, because there's a very low tolerance for people that deny others their well-being.
Yes.
Because there is enough for everyone.
Yes.
Many times over, despite what the media or whatever might say. We know it's false just from the data.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So your work is fundamentally about this independence in service to others. But you've got your defiant, your left angle cross of defiance. You have to do it your own way. Your creativity won't be like anything we've seen. The way you make sure the tribe is fed will be unusual for sure. And then just staying on this leadership theme, because that's what we talked about discussing today. 33 is called retreat, the gate of retreat. And you have it in Pluto. And Pluto's our deepest truth. Pluto is where that deepest pattern is of deception as well as transformation. And 33 is really the prodigal, the person that goes off on the adventure, make a bunch of mistakes, have a lot of wins, and then they come back and they tell everybody about what they learned, which you just did on this interview. It is very much about the past and what you learned from the past, and using the past to help us find a better way forward, because it's leadership, right? And the 731 channel and the 1333 channel, and you have the 31 and the 33, they're both in what's known as collective circuitry. The 1020 is individual circuitry. The 1 is individual circuitry. And then you get the 45 we'll get to, which is tribal. So you're one of these individuals who is a radical individual in service to humanity, understanding what worked in the past and what didn't, how to live by higher principles. And you're an amazing storyteller. And 33 is one of the 2 storytelling gates. So in case people are wondering, 33 off the throat is a storyteller of the past. And I notice every person that has this is pretty obsessed with the past in general, politics, and what they've experienced. And then the other one is 56. So whereas 33 is more interested in the details and the data and the facts, as well as the experiential process, 56 is adventure. So I won't get into 56. You don't have gate 56. And then finally, we have gate 45, which is the king or queen gate. And it's interesting because Donald Trump has the whole channel, which is the dictator channel, right? Okay. And the 731's the Democratic channel, which I think Bernie Sanders has at least half of, as I recall, looking at his chart. Yeah. So, right, there's a sense in the United States right now that people are like, do we want a dictator? Well, if he's benevolent, or do we want, an alpha Democrat? And when you have 45, it is the only voice of the tribal circuitry. In the whole chart, there's one voice for the tribe. And that voice is here to teach people, as the Bible says, teach them how to fish rather than giving them the fish.
Exactly.
And it's an educational energy. And what's interesting is you have it in Uranus or Uranus. And this is funny because Uranus is that unexpected X factor. It's the thing no one saw coming. And because you have the voice of the tribe in Uranus, part of your lifetime is to be called to a pretty mighty position of leadership, but it will be chosen by the tribe. It'll be the tribe, a tribe, the tribe. It could be your state. It could be your county. It doesn't really matter. It could be your own family, but there's a calling to lead the tribe and basically teach them how to be resourceful, how to not waste resources, how to generate more resources. I mean, this is a chart that's got a lot of money in it. And part of the thing for you to really embrace this lifetime is that you'll always attract the resources because you innately have an understanding that not all of it's for you. It's like a portion's for me so I can take care of myself. And of course, the more simply you live, the better you can take care of yourself. And we need resources to take care of ourselves, feed ourselves, clean ourselves, dress ourselves, nurture ourselves. So there's this inherent queen energy in you that people also feel. So it's very interesting to me. It's quite rare. I only know a couple other people in all the, hundreds and hundreds of charts I've looked at over the years that have this much leadership. You essentially have one full leadership channel, and then you have half of the other four. So when you say, leadership, I think the thing for you is you have to stay out of your head, right? Because you're not going to think your way into how this operates.
Yes.
But it's also about the ability to move through the difficulty of being a leader, like finding patience with the trolls and the naysayers and the pushback, because if you aren't a heretic, you miss it. You miss it. And the majority of heretics miss it, not because they didn't have opportunities to bring it, because they were more concerned with their popularity or just simply not being rejected than standing on their dime. And so part of your challenge, as it were, is to get to the place where you're like, say whatever you want. I am a heretic and I am defiant. And it is my promise to humanity that we'll have harmony. And the way we have harmony is no one goes hungry, right? No one goes hungry. Because the ultimate, it seems to me, the ultimate source of the aggression on the planet, and for some of these tribes, it goes back thousands of years, right? They're still fighting over the same crap. Is that somebody was hungry and somebody wasn't sharing. And that led to war.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was, pay the tax or else.
Or
Romans,
someone
the
had
Vikings.
a need. Yeah. Or someone had a need and somebody hoarded what was needed. And, somebody, you or me, somebody was going to die because of it.
That's right. And the other thing, too, I want to finish on this note. You have the 14-2 channel, which connects the sacral, which in a woman is the ovaries, in the man it is the testes, but it's a motor of sexual energy that is way beyond sex. It's just that life force that churns to create. And gate 14 is those resources, and you have it in your design Jupiter, and it's positively aspected. This is what I was talking about before. The resources just always come to you, and you're here to direct humanity because you have the whole channel in a new direction. So this is the chart of someone who is here to catch the limelight. You're here to be remembered, much like Anne Frank, like long after you're gone. And so what's most important, I think, is that be on lots of podcasts, maybe run for office, whatever it takes to be in a leadership role. Because for you, it isn't about playing it safe and hiding in the shadows and, your external markets. So, you're here to, being on the campaign trail, for example, you're like made for that. Oh, we get another speaking gig and get up on the podium and lay it down. Oh, people might throw rotten fruit at you and other people are clapping and, buying the gifts at the market, right? I will say Donald Trump has this figured out. I mean, part of why people go to his rallies, it's like going to a rock concert. People are entertained, they're entertained. So there's this opportunity for you if you drop your fear to really go for it, but it's like, I would just encourage you, I'll stop the share here, to ask yourself, where you've been playing it safe, because that's the kind of chart, like you can't just have this like bucolic life hidden in the country and fulfill what you came here to do. And when you were driving around doing the Bertoia work, I feel like that was preparation for what you're here to do for humanity.
Beth, you've said some, like I've heard you say some of these things, but the way you just put it all together, I'm ready to hear all of that. And I got it in a way that I've not heard it. And you said it so beautifully. And I'm sitting here going like, oh, I can do that. Yeah. Just like I did with the Bertoia project.
Right. Right. The thing is, it's dangerous business. There was a guy I saw on Instagram, and I forget his last name, but his first name is Naz, and he's a Arab that was raised in Israel. And then, his family would entertain Jewish families. And then those Jewish families helped him get into Harvard. And then he came to the United States and built this multi-million-dollar company. And he did this whole talk about peace. And he said, it's dangerous to be a peacemaker right now.
Yes.
But imagine if we all became peacemakers. And I thought of you. Instantly, the first, and I thought, oh my God, I'm talking to Mary. I saw it last night in the middle of the night. And he said, you're alone at home on your phone in your bed watching this video. I'm like, yep. And he's like, remember, you're going to remember this. So he's laying the seed, like, yeah, I'm going to remember it. And as I was watching, I thought of you. I was like, oh, I'm talking to Mary tomorrow.
Wow.
So that is, to me, it's everything. And I will say with a caveat, people still need to be able to defend themselves, right? When they're bullied on the playground, when they're unfairly attacked, whatever it may be. And that's what makes it so tricky, because it isn't just, oh, let's have peace. We have to agree to the rules of engagement. But even so, if more and more and more of us are saying, how do we do this peacefully? How do we, at least for the next generation, raise all of our children to choose peace, because that's where we're going to really clear from the planet, is through the parenting.
I always think about Gandhi standing, just standing there, standing for what he was committed to. All this stuff was going around him, and I'm sure that he had people protecting him. I don't know all the details, but he just stood. And that's what I can be counted on for. I want to say one more thing, about resources, that gate 14. I'm clear that people's promise for the world is part of their resource. It's hidden. And we've taken all these resources from Mother Nature, but we've forgotten to look at what are our resources.
Mm-hmm.
We are not any of us poor. We are all wealthy, gifted, extraordinary human beings. And we all have, one of the things that I've really clear from human design is there's no wrong human design. There's no bad human design. There's just the conditioning away from the gift and the resource that we are for the.
Yeah, every single human being is a magical, unique creation.
Yes.
You made me think of something just now that I've never really thought about in this way, but all the extraction from the earth, it seems to me on some level, is the result of people looking outside themselves for leadership.
Yes.
And when you do that, you become hollow.
Yes.
You become empty, you
Yes.
become lost, and life becomes miserable. And so then the conditioning is, well, fill it up with beauty products and fill it up with fast food and fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. And now there's plastic on every beach in the world, right? Yeah. There's plastic in every liver, in every human body now. And what do you think about that? Do you think that's like there's a...
Oh, I totally align with you.
Yeah.
You couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it better than that. We always are looking for an answer outside of us rather than, like, who am I? The best thing that ever happened to me, and I've had lots of best things. When I did the S training, when I did the work of transformation at Landmark Worldwide, I got that I'm responsible for my entire, whatever I create. I'm creating, whether it's by default or by intention. And so I ended up with a life that was not going to happen. And then on top of all of that work, to discover human design and to discover my human design and empower other people to get theirs and clear out all that stuff that is not them. It's, like one of the most recent best blessing.
Yeah, I think, I've come across various people now online trying to poo-poo human design. And what I find so amusing is I'm like, they must not know their human design, because human design is one of those things. It's like the discovery of penicillin, or, even better, it's like, I don't know, toast and black coffee. Like, it's right up there on like miracles of human existence, and the ocean, dolphins, stars.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. And to me, the proof is always in the pudding, because I'm an eminently practical person. Like, don't talk philosophy and all this stuff to me. Like, just, can you use it? Is it practical? Right? Does it work? And the thing about human design is it works every time, without exception, no matter what your ethnic, religious, whatever background. And it empowers the individual to take sovereignty over their own life and stop the hunger of the endless craving for the outside. Like, please love me. Please tell me I'm beautiful. Please pay me. Please. And that grabby energy that, and I had it too. We all have it. We all come in imprinted with it. From the moment we're born, you're supposed to answer to someone else. And you and I never really cooperated with that.
Oh, I did my share.
Oh, we did, of course.
And then I learned, and it was not a fast track. It was faster because most people live and they don't have any clue about it. So I guess on that way, it was a really fast track, but it's been my life. Sometimes I call my work the business of living life. People have no relationship with living life. They have a relationship with work, with getting this or doing that, or, all those extreme sports where people have to feel their body by doing. It's like, no, you can sit and breathe and be connected. We are nature. We're not, you don't have to go out someplace to go into nature. It's like, no, we are nature. Anyway.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's like watching the people handle the vipers and people climbing up steep rocks with no ropes. And I always go, oh, that's how they're going to die. And they always do.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And it's like, good for you. But that's really not the point. And, it's like no one's here to be a billionaire. It's absurd. Like they're just a waste of energy and a hoarding of resources. So anyway, this has been so
I want to say
expanding.
one more
Thank you.
thing, given what you just said about resources like that. I learned when I was learning fundraising from Lynn Twist that the people who had the most money were the most afraid
Of course.
of being with themselves with nothing.
Yeah.
And even I've had that experience. I was in New York City one day and I didn't have enough money to get home. What do I need? What do I need to do now? I'm walking across Central Park and I went like, I need some help here. I need to do something to get home. And 15 minutes later, I got a phone call from an art gallery to say, we've got some Bertoia, we've got some jewelry here. We think it's Bertoia. Could you come and verify it for us? So I went, took photographs. They gave me a check and I got home. But that's what life looks like when you're in the flow of it. You know
Yeah.
what that's like. You've got your own examples.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to leave people, that
Yeah, I agree. It's very
literally
positive
when
and
you
really
return to
empowering.
yourself, you have everything. We have everything we need when we need it. It's an extraordinary way to live and be in life.
Yeah, it really is. Not needing the outside or anyone to fill you up because you're a self-fulfilling resource.
And that you can be with anyone.
Hmm.
You can there's always a solution.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this podcast and for inviting me to be with you. I'm forever grateful. I really appreciate you a lot.
Oh, thanks, Mary. I think I'll be having you back at some point.
I'd love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you listen again. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Align to Your Design. If you did, please grab my free report, Business by Design, at yourpurpose.com, and then join our Facebook group, Align to Your Design. See you next time.